In this episode, I will be talking mainly on three topics concerning the Pachelbel Aria Secunda from the Hexacordum Appolinis. One, we'll talk a little bit about the bundle or the Hexacordum Appolinis. Secondly, we'll go into a bit of detail on trills, main note or upper note. And thirdly, something we're going to do every video is finding the tempo guidance spot. More on that in a minute after this. Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of Afterthoughts. My name is Wim Winters and I have recorded the Pachelbel Aria Secunda from the Hexacordum Appolinis. This is a bundle of 6 pieces, 6 variations that Pachelbel wrote in 1699. We have made one recording on Pachelbel earlier. I will link in the description box and in this video. And in the afterthoughts related to that video, I'm talking a little bit more on the life of Pachelbel. So this is one of his most known bundles of variation sets, the Hexacordum Appolinis, as said, consisting out of or containing 6 variation sets in different keys. And what I recorded is actually the second one, the Aria Secunda. So before we go into some details and talk about the question of the trills, I would like to go to my third point, which is the kind of guidance tempo spot. I have to find a name for that. And I'll be talking on that because every piece, to my mind, almost every piece, has some kind of measure, place, fragment, where you can feel there is a kind of limitation of tempo. Sometimes you have, and we have made some videos on doubts and decisions, there are different tempo decisions that could be made. We're talking a lot on notation. That's a personal interpretation of myself. I think that's related to sources, but we're going to smear out over many videos because it's a very complicated and at the same time very simple issue to talk about. But I was reading last week in Leopold Mozart's Violinschule, so his violin school. That's a book we'll be talking about later this year or the coming months. You know, we're diving into J.S.Bach soon, so Leopold Mozart has to wait a little bit. But I was reading that Violinschule, which is published 1756, if I remember well. And Leopold, that's by the way a very interesting source to read if you want to start somewhere. It's very practical. Of course, it's related to violin playing, but it's a very practical source to read, very informational, and you can take that information as well and take it to the keyboard. He was writing, Leopold Mozart, that regarding to tempo choices, he talks about the tempo ordinario, so the average tempo, which you have to feel, he says. And we talked about that in the past, and we will talk about that more in the future, much more. But according to that, he said that every piece has a kind of place, has a place where the musician can feel that there is a maximum of tempo. There is some kind of technical difficulty or a musical requirement that need you to stay under that. Of course, that's a matter of taste and feel and very much, I think, also a matter of habit. You remember the Waldstein Sonata applied on clavichord was a little bit of an experiment, but the tempo choice, for me, that's my tempo choice. I didn't change it for the clavichord. So some people reacted that it was too slow, but it's mainly because it's a habit of hearing it played much faster. And that's a connection to the metronome numbers, but that's a whole other issue. So it's a matter of habit, but it's something you can develop. And actually I was surprised to read that in Leopold Mozart's book. I've read that before, but again, you have to reread things that you have read 10 or 20 years ago in order to interpret them differently. And it struck me because that's often how it works with me. There are literally in every piece has some elements that if you want to take a faster tempo, you have to deal with that. You have to find a solution for that. And so I thought, why not implementing as a standard feature in the Afterthoughts? So that's what we're going to do in the future. And I start with that, actually. So let's go to the passage that let me play this piece slower. So there are two aspects. You have 5 variations, yes? And I play them more or less in the same tempo. Since the notation is the same, I don't see the need to play the variations in a different tempo. If that is something that could be related to an historical source, I would not know for sure. I think it could be very well in historic practice. It's at least as I feel it, because if you change the tempo in a variation, and it goes, I think, towards also J.S.Bach, but Mozart as well, you have tempo changes, but then you have also measurement bar changes. So that's connected to that, very complicated sometimes, because you have proportions, proportional sesquialter in Bach's works, so that you have 1 or 2 against 3 and things like that. That works great. But here, I think in that music, that benefits, if possible, from playing in one tempo. So, and I played it a little bit faster than I did on the recording. But to be honest with you, variation number 4, that's the place where we have to be for this tempo guidance spot. And if you know a better word for that, please leave it in the comment boxes. I will be happy to use that. So there you have the ornamentation in the variation with 30-second notes. So a lot is happening there. You have these 30-second notes in the bass. Sorry. And especially these ones are actually difficult to play with a very smooth, with a very nice articulation, like they said, the ordentlich is voortgaan. So you can play legato, but it has to have a very good speech still. It's not the over legato of the 19th century, later 19th century. So I need to hit them, pum pum. So, and in order to do that, there is a kind of the tempo that is on this instrument can differ from another instrument. That you need to develop the sound there. And you can say just practice a little bit more, that your fingers are more used to those fast notes, and then you can play it. Yeah, maybe, but I'm not so sure on this instrument. And I'm not so sure either if you would play it on a clavichord, on a harpsichord, excuse me, or an organ. So certainly an organ, if you would play this on the principal 8 of an historic organ, that needs time to speak. So there you have a passage where I thought, well, in order to play this beautifully, I think that I need to slow down a little bit. Also trills like that. So then you have this. Sorry. So it must sound joyful, and I don't want to say with this that you have to play this in a kind of adagio feel, very heavy. No, it must sound joyful, but that has nothing to do with playing very fast. That has more to do with the speech, with the good articulation, in my opinion, than with just increasing the tempo. And if you tie this tempo to the first variation, you have. And the reason that I chose firstly for a little bit faster tempo is because you come here in the second one, And you might say, well, that's a very long note, and it is a long note, but at the same time, it gives a rest. You feel, and that's what I mean with a metrical feel of expression. It's not playing over the note like, you know, you see how that leads to the next. If you have this tension for going to the next beat, you increase the tempo inevitably, and that's what happens with but it's another topic with the tempo rubato, end of the 18th century, early 19th century, Beethoven, Czerny, and then more in the 19th century, that this feel of this bow tension over the sentence, that became important, and that led to a flexible tempo, which you had partly in the 18th century, but not in the same way. And that flexible tempo inevitably increased a little bit of tempo over time. So just by staying there on the beat, gives such an incredible feel of rest that I think is very much to be implemented in that music and not in this music alone. It goes throughout the whole 18th century, connecting to the Waldstein. It still is there. You feel this ease, this very perpetual mobile feel. It's not the Russian. I exaggerate, but that's, you know what I mean. I think that's a very 18th century, in my field, way approach of playing. Okay, I just watched on the tablet. We have to hurry a little bit to not to make this Afterthoughts too long, and go to the trill. You might have noticed that I start most trills. I'm not very consistent in this because I feel sometimes it can be different, but mainly the trills start with the main note. So not. And why do I do that? Because I know out of reactions of some of you and also reading Facebook comments that today many musicians think that all trills start with the upper note. And I'm not saying that you, if you're watching this, I'm not pointing to someone specifically, but in general. And that's of course an evolution that we know from the 60s, 70s with the old music revival. That in Bach's music, most of Bach's music, not all, you can say that all trills are played with the upper note, very generally speaking. But the Italian influence of the 17th century is different. Frescobaldi, later Froberger, then you are already in southern Germany, then there the trill is on the main note. If you want to learn more on that, I will make a book review of this. This is Neumann. We've talked about that before. Ornamentation, Baroque and post-Baroque music. This gives almost every source that you can think of and puts it in the context. But again, I will make a book review on that because it's very worthwhile mentioning. But there you can read some things. But just studying music of Frescobaldi, where you have the trills with the main note, going to southern Germany, and Pachelbel was much influenced by that style. Young J.S.Bach was much influenced by this style. So the young works of Bach, you can, in an historic context, very well say that you should, if you want to be sure in one way or another, to make sure that you are as close as you can get, probably before 1700, before we moved to Lunenburg and discovered the French music actually more than he did with his brother Christoph. It's obvious that the main note trill was still existent. So also in the Pachelbel we did in the F minor variations, you hear often though the trills on the upper note, but I think stylistically for that music, that's on the main note. Having said that, sometimes it works great with the upper note. That's up to taste, and you, of course, you make your own ornaments in the music. That's all up to taste, but I think it's important to realize that at least if you want to be, I must say, not historically informed in a way that you can be informed, that in this style, the chances are big that Pachelbel might have been under that influence of main note trills. So all to say that it's not simple. Ornamentation is very, very, very complicated. And certainly nobody, really nobody, I can speak for all of us, really knows exactly how it was. If they, in that time, in the 18th century, where so many things changed from an Italian influence to a French influence, a mixture in Germany, a mixture in Vienna at the end of the 18th century, if anybody can really know what was in the kind of general way accepted, letting alone the fact that many composers certainly had their own specific kind of ideas and notations. Okay, that was it for this Afterthoughts. Next time will be Haydn, I guess, G minor sonata, and boy, is there a lot to be told. Maybe that Afterthoughts might be cut into 2 parts as well. I thank you for listening, watching. Don't hesitate to write me your idea on those trills in the comment boxes. It would be nice to read. Don't forget to subscribe. You know also that we are on Patreon since a few weeks, so you can support us for even $1. It's no obligation, but it makes a huge difference. Some of you have already done, which was amazing experience for me to see how you responded to that. So thank you for that, really. I see you next time again. Bye.